Okay, so now we've completed the finishing stage of our XP Guitar Kit. The next thing we need to do is start installing some hardware. So the first hardware component we're going to have a look at today are our strap buttons. Strap buttons are responsible for keeping our guitar secure when we're using a strap or in the shoulders, and also the location of the strap buttons themselves has a lot to do with the balance of the guitar when you've got a strap on and you're standing up playing. So first thing we need to consider is placement. Now on an EXP style guitar, normally there's a couple of different positions you might see them. You might see the strap button on the bottom halfway or about a third of the way down, and the front strap button you might see on this top horn, or alternatively you will also often see it positioned just here in the center of the neck heel. Now I'm not as big a fan of that myself, because I feel like the strap, it's almost getting lifted when it's coming across that part of the body, but a lot of people do favor that, so something to keep in mind. I'd suggest just researching what's going to be ideal for you. In this case, we're going to install the strap buttons a third of the way down from the top of the guitar and center of that top horn. So you might be wondering why I've got green tape on the guitar. The tape's used basically to mark instead of marking directly onto the timber. So if you've got a lead pencil, for instance, and you need to make a mark for some measurements, just use some low-tack painter's masking tape. Make sure you get the low-tack stuff. It won't remove any finish when you're taking it off. In any case, so we're going to work on this one about a third of the way down and this one in the center of this horn. So first thing we need to do is get an approximate measure. So we're about 40 centimeters. So I'm going to come down about 15 centimeters from this top, and I'm going to pretty much just eyeball center here and then measure using my set square. I'll then measure down halfway and make a mark. So the way to make a mark, one thing I use is I've just got this precision screwdriver that I've ground the top away, but anything sharp like that you can make an indentation. So I'm going to go down 20, then I'm going to use my pencil just to quickly mark that spot. Then I'm going to indent that spot, and then I can remove my tape. I'll do the same thing on the other side. And the body, when I said 20 before, the depth of these bodies is generally 40 mil. So and the next thing we need to do is drill pilot holes. So anytime you're installing hardware on an electric guitar that the holes aren't pre-drilled, I would suggest drilling pilot holes first. And the reason for that is these screws, well, they're a little bit larger on the strap buttons, but the majority of the screws you're going to be screwing into the body are really quite small and fragile, so they're easily stripped. So we need to take a couple of precautions to prevent those screws being stripped. So the first thing we need to do is drill pilot holes on every hole, every screw hole we're going to make on the guitar. So what I recommend is use a drill bit that's approximately 2/3 the thickness of the screw you're going to drill. And you might also notice I've got this blue tape on the drill bit here. I did. The reason for that, I'll just cut some new tape. The reason for that is to give me an indication of depth. So if drilling pilot holes, I would normally suggest drilling to 2/3 depth, and that's very difficult to work out. But if we've got some tape, we can simply measure that against the screw. Now, one mistake people often make is they measure 2/3 depth of the entire screw, but as you can see, as part of this strap button assembly, we've only got 2/3 of or half the screw really going into the timber. So we really just want to make a comparison there. I'm not sure if you can see that on camera, and put some tape approximately 2/3 of the way down the drill bit. And once that's done, you've got a depth indicator for your drill. And from there we can drill our pilot holes. So Nothing too complex. We're just looking to keep the drill as straight as possible. And now another thing you might like to do, I'm not so concerned on this guitar, it's an all finish, so it's not going to have this problem, but if you had a painted guitar, for instance, what can happen when you install these screws or take them out is the paint can chip around the edges. So one thing you can do is chamfer the holes. So I'll just do this using a relatively small drill bit, and I'll just put it in the edge of the hole like that and just lightly chamfer the edges. Just a quick tip with your truss rod cover installation. If you want a quick way to align that dead center, just put some tape on the truss rod on the bench, find center on the truss rod, mark the tape, and then just using your using a rule, just align that line up to that middle line. Once that's in place, press down the tape. That'll keep the truss rod cover in place, and then you can mark out your holes. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is install our tuners. I've already got these three loosely in place. So basically, this is a set of 6 inline tuners, so we don't need to separate them out from left to right or anything like that. They're not staggered posts either, so the order doesn't really matter. So it's simply just a case of the washer going on first, followed by the bushing, and just hand tightening. And when you've got that in place, you can either square that off using a set square or align those up with a steel rule if you don't have a set square handy. And as we've done all the other holes on the guitar, just mark out with a scribe of some sort, and then drill your pilot holes, and your tuners will be installed. Okay, so our next job is to install the bridge. We'll be installing a tune-o-matic bridge on this guitar. Bushings go directly into the hole like so. The posts are then screwed in place, and the tailpiece is fixed in place like that. Now they're all height adjustable, so the tailpiece is height adjustable, and that's really just to adjust the breakpoint angle or the break angle of the string coming off the bridge, and the bridge is obviously height adjustable to adjust your action. So first thing we need to do though is get our ground wire in place. So when we're doing the electronics later, we're going to need to ground the signal. So that's generally grounded out against the bushing that's closest to the electronics cavity. So yours may already be pre-drilled. I've just drilled this earlier, but generally you want to take great care when you're doing this. Make sure you've got a long, thin drill piece, but it's thick enough, it's thick enough to handle the wire, and definitely have something under the drill that can just protect it from scratching, and just drill very carefully and very slowly. Basically what you're trying to do is drill into this rear electronics cavity. As you can see, got the hole just coming in just there. But again, be very careful with that, and use as long a drill bit as you can manage. Once you've got that hole drilled, you'll need to find there should be one lone wire in your package, and that's generally that ground wire. You'll just thread that through there for now. And from here we need the bushing to sit hard up against it. So bend that back from now. Little hook at the end. Just slowly feed it through while you're pushing and you're bushing. Now they'll sometimes be quite firm. Sometimes you'll be able to get them in by hand. if you need to give them a little bit of encouragement, obviously first definitely unscrew them. They'll often come like this, and definitely use something between a hammer and the top just to protect the top, or use a rubber mallet. Of course, before that, just clean the holes out as well. You may find there's just some gunk that's built up in there from the finish if you didn't mask well, and you can normally clean it up. Next, we've got, so these are the posts for our tailpiece, and they go in like so. And these are the posts for our bridge, which go in like so. So generally screw those all the way down to start with. And the bridge generally has the adjustment, the intonation adjustment screws facing inward. It just sits on over the top like so. And the tailpiece sits in there and is kept in place from the tension of the string. So I wouldn't leave that there until you've got the strings in place. But we will be installing our 2 E strings next, and that will help us align the humbuckers.